Have you ever seen those headlines on YouTube? Start a business on marketplaces with just $100 in your pocket? I've seen those headlines and I've even used them myself. But the thing is, it's not that simple. Today we're going to figure out how much money you actually need to start on Amazon or any other marketplace. It's not just about buying the product, there are many other little things that make up the final cost. Let's dive in. My name is Katja and I've been selling on Amazon since 2018. I have a cookware brand in Europe and the United States. Let's take a look at what the startup costs are. Beginners often think, okay, I found a product for $4. Great, I'll order 500 units. The minimum order was, say, 1,000. You negotiated and settled on 500. Wonderful. And you multiply 500 by 4, get $2,000, and it's like, that's my startup budget. But it's not that simple. Let's start looking at the details. The first stage that already costs money is product research, which means finding the right product for you. Theoretically, you can find a product for free, but in reality, the market is very competitive, and I recommend everyone use special software like Jungle Scout or Helium 10 to choose the best possible product to start with. That means competitor research, sales velocity research, price research, keywords, and much more. And I assure you, the software isn't expensive, but bad purchases are very costly for sellers. You could order 500 units of a $4 product that won't sell, and you'll spend way more than a yearly software subscription. And you don't even have to start with a yearly one. The next stage that many people skip is product samples. I still suggest starting with product samples when dealing with unverified suppliers. Yes, it takes extra time, but it's good to either send an inspection team to check the product on site or ask them to send you a sample. And it probably costs more in time than in money, but nevertheless, keep that in mind. The third point is the matter of certificates. If you're selling food or anything that comes into contact with food or skin, like cookware, cosmetics, textiles, and electronics, of course, these are all products that require certification. And certificates can also cost money. It's always a great idea to ask the supplier if they have a certificate for that specific product. Often they already work with the countries we need and they have a certificate that's suitable for our marketplace. But there are suppliers who work for completely different markets and they don't have, for example, US certification. And then if you've really fallen in love with this product, by the way, I don't recommend falling in love with a product only cold, hard calculation. So if you really like the product, it might turn out that getting a certificate isn't that expensive. We've done certification and there's nothing scary about it. It does take time, but now in a world with GP, you can ask how to do it more efficiently and cheaply. But nevertheless, certification can also cost money. Moving on to the most obvious part, which is purchasing the goods. There's also a certain range of options here, a bit of a spread. Say a supplier has a certain minimum order quantity at a certain price, but if you buy a little bit more, can you negotiate on the price? And if you buy a little bit less, can you keep the same price? So yeah, we either increase the minimums and haggle on price, or we decrease the minimums and ask to keep the price the same, right? So there are different ways to negotiate here. The next point is whether to customize or not. There are different approaches. Some people say, I'm serious about this, I want to customize right away. Others say, I don't even know if this will start selling or not. Let's not customize anything at all, not the product, not the packaging. Packaging is a whole separate topic. Sometimes there's a desire to make the packaging really simple and plain, but there are 2 points here. First, defects can occur. The first point is that defects can occur during last mile delivery. If the packaging is too poor or flimsy, the product will simply arrive damaged. This leads to returns and low product rating. So you shouldn't always try to skimp and save on packaging. And the second point is user experience. Of course, packaging adds value. If customers receive a pot in a beautiful branded high-quality box, they often take photos of it with the box for their reviews. It might seem strange, right? We're going to throw the box away anyway. What does it matter what's printed on it? But no, people see additional value in it. We even conducted surveys. Customers note that it's not just if they want to give the pot set as a gift. They themselves really appreciate and like it when the packaging is nice. And the photos of the packaging in reviews prove this. So packaging can help sales, but at the initial stage, it's definitely not what you should focus on. Next, we'll talk about barcode branding and packaging in terms of legal compliance. This is also a separate topic. What kind of product do you have? What icons, what inserts should be made for this product? Development, sending these designs to the supplier so they can finalize them and print them. This all takes both time and money, so keep that in mind. Now, the next expense is not obvious at all. It is the cost of inspections. We order probably at least 3 inspections. That is, even if we know the supplier a little bit, even if we know them slightly, still 3 inspections. First, that they have started producing the goods if the batch is large. Second, that they have produced half roughly within the required time frame. And third, that is at the stage of final packaging and loading. Inspections are a great thing. Do not neglect them. If you have already, of course, sent 500 shipments with this supplier and everything was fine, then you probably do not need them anymore. But for the first few times, especially if the product is expensive, if you are betting on it, if the supplier is unverified, then inspection is a great idea. What else should we spend our money and effort on? That is photos and the listing. In our case, we take at least 1 photo on a white background, and after that we do not do any more photo shoots. We use creative tools by Amazon and various other favorite neural networks. Basically, we place the product into a lifestyle interior using a neural network, but there should be at least 1 great, high-quality photo on a white background. Listings, too, in today's reality, are no longer such an expensive process, even considering multiple translations for European countries. Still, neural networks now help us write titles, bullets, descriptions, and A+ content in all languages. In short, just keep in mind that there is such a step. It is time-consuming, but not so costly in terms of money. Moving step by step. So we have ordered the product, ordered inspections, and in the meantime created the listings and the content. And then we spend money on shipping the goods from the supplier to the Amazon warehouse. For example, using Amazon Global Logistics, calculate that too. In the case of bulky items, about half the cost. In the case of bulky items, the shipping cost in general can equal the cost price. So, for example, if your stepladder costs $8 or $10, then sometimes if the product is really quite bulky, when calculated for each stepladder, shipping from China can also cost, say, $5. Well, roughly almost as much as the stepladder itself. So keep in mind, it's not exactly cheap to ship oversized items from China sometimes. Next, we need to calculate all the Amazon fees, but usually no one has any questions here. Everyone knows how to use a calculator and roughly what the fulfillment costs are for products. But an interesting point is PPC advertising. Yes, this is a major expense item. Nothing happens without marketing. You know that I always promote Danix.ai. It's software where you set the ACOS, and this software brings, yes, I'm a fan of the Danix.ai service. And it's a great autopilot for PPC on Amazon, for advertising on Amazon. What is it? For each product, you need to determine the desired ACOS. Well, in Russian, it's DR, basically the share of advertising costs. You say, for this product, I want an ACOS of 20%. For this one, I don't have extra margin, I want 15%. For this one, I want to scale up and start as fast as possible, I want 25%. And then this tool does everything for you. But nevertheless, you must immediately include these 15, 20, or even 25% in the product cost. And it usually won't work to have less than 15% because Amazon is a super competitive market and you can't win just with price, like listing everything for pennies. You still need advertising. We checked. And in the end, 15% is that minimum ACOS when sales start. Sometimes more is better. You understand that if you set a lower ACOS, your bids will be very low. You won't win advertising auctions, you simply won't have sales. So 15% for advertising of the final cost, I'd say that's the norm or even the minimum norm. Keep that in mind. And we'll finish with expenses. And finally, I'll talk about expenses for reviews and Vine. I have a whole video about Vine. It's like Amazon got tired of fighting review manipulation and decided to lead this structure. Now you can order 30 reviews for money. They won't necessarily be positive, we've talked about that. They'll be different, though more often, to be honest, positive. So this Vine procedure also costs money, $200 to 30 samples. And plus all this shipping, the fulfillment cost is also on you. And the product cost is also on you. So Vine is a great thing, but the Vine expense must be immediately included in the product cost. And finally, I'd like to share some rough figures that I've seen in real life from my friends. A bare bones launch would probably cost at least $3,000 to $5,000. A mid-range launch, where everything is more or less comfortable, is $7,000 to $12,000. And for a more professional option, if you want to do everything right from the start, it's $15,000 and up. So keep that in mind. Happy selling. Bye-bye.